Okay,
Wow.
so try. Yeah, that looks perfect. Okay, so as I said, yeah, this is our title. We were looking at urban flood resilience in cities. Yeah, next slide, please. So a little bit about the background. Urban flood risk is on the rise globally, and there are many different reasons why that is. It's not only because there is more rain, so climate change is definitely a big factor, but there are also factors like urbanization and the fact that we're building in areas where they're in floodplains where we know that there's going to be flooding, and that also the value of everything that's being built is increasing, and there's densification in urban areas. More and more people are moving to cities. So it's actually a complex issue, but the data shows that there is an increasing risk in cities. And floods actually are a huge issue. The diagram on the right-hand side shows it a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but a large part of the damages worldwide due to natural catastrophes are from floods. And it costs, so there's loss of lives, and there's damage to infrastructure, and there's economic damage. So we think it's an important topic, and there's an increasing trend in cities towards implementing nature-based solutions throughout the city. And this lowers flood risk in many ways, and it also has other benefits like mitigating the urban heat island effect and increasing biodiversity and increasing the livability in cities. So we decided that we wanted to look at nature-based solutions as an intervention to mitigate the risk of floods in cities. And so our counterfactual, which we'll get to later, is the traditional kind of gray infrastructure, the pipes, the sewage systems that are underground and that are often not able to deal with the increasing amounts of water and increased precipitation. And here on the right-hand side, you can see some studies that we've cited. So there's an 85% increase of flooding in UK cities. And also in European cities, it's been found that there's a 100% increase in 100-year flood events, or above the flood peak to be expected. So next slide. This next slide just shows actually the specific problems in urban areas. So on the right-hand side, you can see sealed off surfaces, and that just means that the natural water balance that exists in catchments before development is that a lot of the water that falls will infiltrate and will evaporate, and there's evapotranspiration from the vegetation that's present. And only a small fraction of that water will turn into runoff, which is what we actually then experience as a flood. And so on the right-hand side, you can see that because of the increased sealing of the ground, there's just a lot more runoff. And that's why we have very fast floods, very high flood peaks in urban areas. And so the idea with the green infrastructure is to get closer to the pre-development water balance, have more infiltration, more evapotranspiration, and less runoff. Flavia, I think you're next.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. The question for our group, the water group, is how has the implementation of nature-based solutions in the UK and Denmark affected the resilience of urban populations to floods compared with the standard engineered methods? Thank you. Next. This is a peacock. It explains what areas we decided to look at, the population. We were looking at urban areas and the population density in UK and Denmark, because that's where we could get some data sets in Europe. Then our intervention we're looking at nature-based solution in comparison to the counterfactual, which was our comparator for engineered drainage systems only. And the outcome was on urban flood impacts. Next. Daniel or Irene?
Yes, hello. So for our search strategy, we basically, our first thing was we tried to figure out with as many synonyms for city as we could get. So your urban, built up environment and so forth, and also for the different countries. That's especially problematic with the United Kingdom because the UK has dozens of different names and also the various nations within it, some of which have not realized that they have not been independent for a few centuries, though that may change. Then again, if any of you have been paying attention to the news in London recently, you might see why it might not change. We then relied on Katerina, who's the only one here who actually does hydrology and knows anything about this sort of thing, to tell us what types of management strategies there are and to come up with the terms for that, and also for the outcomes, because Katerina had actually read things about this subject before. I'm a biologist. I don't know how this stuff works. It's too practical and employable to be really in my field. And so Katerina basically told us what to use. And we relied on Scopus and Web of Science. We didn't go on CABI because this isn't agriculture. So we thought it probably wouldn't have anything. And also, we barely had time to screen the few, well, we didn't even have time to screen everything we screened with these two. So go on. So for the citation screening, we first obviously did what everyone did. We only screened a couple, well, a couple hundred really, a bit less, a bit over 200. As you can see, that still left about 1,100 that we never screened, annoyingly. We didn't get a great Cohen's kappa. To a large degree, it was just disagreements over the importance of modeling and also not being familiar with the subject by certain reviewers, myself included. Just turns out when you know nothing about a subject, you're not the best at screening papers. I know it's a shocking one, but still, we essentially said that the papers had to be real studies, which actually proved to be more difficult than we thought, because apparently hydrology is a field where everyone is really into maths and modeling and less into, actually seeing how the real world works. But far be it for me to criticize mathematicians. We also said that it had to be either in the UK or Denmark, on the basis of Katerina having told us that there would be many studies on nature-based solutions in Denmark. There were none. Well, there was one. And of course, within the UK, well, we just try to see what we could find. So next. So we found 1410 studies overall. 1,397 were unique. We screened 197, of which we excluded 177. And then we didn't really get to the rest in a systematic way. We just sort of picked which ones by the title looked like they were more likely to have something worthwhile than the others. Ones that had British place names, for instance, Calder Valley, Tyneside, that sort of thing. Continue. And I forget actually where I'm
I think this is my point, Daniel.
Yeah,
Thank you for your amazing critical introduction. So yeah, we actually came across, we managed to create this amazing data structure sheet with a lot of different options with the help of Katerina and for intervention, population, etc., with a lot of drop-down lists. And I think that was quite a very nice exercise to do. Problem is that when we then went to look at the 20 paper that we selected, we started reading them. We found, first of all, that some of them were not either in UK and Denmark. We even found one in Turkish language. And then we also found that it was pretty hard to complete our table because, as you can see, most of these papers weren't actually giving first data. They were mostly about modeling or modeling solutions and not data, so no primary data. So that was quite difficult. So if you look at the other slide, you can see our preliminary results. You can see we found then 20 papers, of which we had to exclude 4 more because they weren't either in the UK or in Denmark. We found 15 papers from UK and 1 from Denmark, which of course wasn't actually what we were expecting. So this was a total of 31 studies. But we when we got to this point, we were, well, there could have been some problem probably in the search or the screening process, because we are not finding a successfully reliable selection of papers, but also we weren't really able to screen the paper based on the content, because when we got to that point, we also saw that most of them weren't actually adequate for our research questions. So yeah, we concluded that there could have been multiple problems in the first in the screening, first in the search criteria, in the screening. In fact, when we searched the paper, we found a lot of paper from China, for instance. There was an overwhelming quantity of paper from China or India. And that took us a lot of time. And yeah, so basically this is our result right now. And we should start this process again in order to do it properly. Last slide. Thank you very much for your attention for this course. It was amazing and we learned so much from it. And we are looking forward to apply it for our next systematic reviewing. Thank you so much.